I wanted to do something different this week because I think it's necessary. We're approaching a point in time where I just feel like we needed to talk about it. There's a lot going on in the last couple of weeks. I've done a lot of AI issues that's coming to light, but it's not just the AI issues. I think we all know a lot of turmoil and possible cataclysms of all sides. What I found kind of, I don't want to say interesting, but concerning is the convergence of these potential cataclysms. You have AI becoming, reaching general intelligence much sooner and quicker than we thought. We have the collapsing economy. We have possibility of World War III, and we are even getting aliens coming in. We have ongoing possibility of natural disasters, from sun flares, solar flares, to asteroids colliding with us. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I hope you like it. We're just going to talk about what I think are the three main issues. It's financial collapse, World War III, and AI. Now, I do have to be careful because I am on YouTube, so we'll get into the more safer areas, but we'll talk about some other stuff. So hopefully you like this. I think it's important. I think we need to talk about it a little bit more than we are. What I found interesting, so there's these main three convergence of possible cataclysmic destruction of humanity. I have to be careful because I am on YouTube, and I didn't really want to get political on this channel, and I don't want to get political, and I don't want to bring politics in. This isn't one set of politics or the other. I'm really talking about how I see an escalation and a convergence of three main issues that could lead to our destruction. That is World War III and economic collapse. And those kind of go hand in hand. One is causing, I believe, the economic collapse is the reason for why we're seeing all this stuff. But also sort of ties into AI, but AI could be going on without these two and be causing our existential crisis on its own. But we also have these other two things that are more connected. But as you can see, I was preparing this video, overnight, I guess, or since yesterday, around Taiwan, China has been running military exercises around the island. I think they have about 71 planes and about 71 Chinese warplanes and 9 ships crossing the midline of the Taiwan Strait. Now, they have done some of these military exercises before, but it seems to be becoming more and more frequent, and China has not obviously ever shied away from saying that it thinks Taiwan is a part of China. And so we've been kind of looking at this for a while, expecting China to invade Taiwan. We'd like for it to not happen, but you can see that if China were to do this, it's because of the weakening of the Western hegemony, the war in Ukraine and Russia. I know I got to be careful again because it's YouTube, but that seems to be, taking attention away from China and Taiwan. China, Russia, and the BRICS countries are all kind of taking the economic power away from the hegemony of the US dollar, creating new trade alliances, just being a really big shift of world powers. And when this happens, the tensions grow and grow and grow. So the economic collapse and World War III are really interlinked. But AI is sort of on its own. It would have happened already. These two are we could stop these other two. AI might not be able to be stopped at this point, but so it seems to be every day we're getting closer and closer to possible, like nuclear Armageddon. You're seeing a lot of videos online of like the nuclear war simulation, and over the last like 6 months or so, or last year, seeing a lot of like how to survive a nuclear holocaust. It almost seems inevitable, and I'd really like to not have that happen. And so I think it's something we should talk about. Be aware of that we're facing a lot of doomsday scenarios, and I know we've had people in the past say, "Oh, the end is nigh," but when you live in a time where there's these big convergence of possible destruction, you got to pay attention, and you got to start thinking about what might happen and how you're going to survive, and what we're going to do about it, and what we should do about it. So this is interesting. This is what this video is meant to do, just maybe like get us talking about it. I just felt like this is so on my mind. If I didn't do a video about it and talk about it, then it would just sort of be in my head for a long time. So I wanted to get it out, have a talk about it, see if you guys are interested in this. I want to do a video like this to be more a lead up to potentially doing live streams in the future, where I just talk to you guys and not so organized. So I will go back to probably a normal Sunday weird stories, that kind of thing. But I wanted to sort of test the waters on this too. So, I know it's not the most exciting and fun thing to talk about, but it is dark, and I wanted to include aliens in this in this topic, in this video, because that's another convergence I see. We're seeing a lot of alien talk, even by officials, and you had Avi Loeb. That's interesting. Avi Loeb talking about how there might be a mothership. It's a Harvard professor, if you don't know, talking about a possible mothership, and Momoa being a probe, and you're seeing the military brass and talking about it, and you're seeing a lot more of these type of videos and a lot more discussions. You've seen Project Moonbeam. We did a video on that, being a possibility, and Project Moonbeam could be tied to all these things, could be tied to a World War III type scenario, or a cataclysm. I didn't want to talk too much about it because it doesn't feel like the more pressing issue or necessarily direct doomsday scenario. Because if aliens wanted to, and it's World War III here, if aliens wanted to take us out, I don't think they'd have any problems. We wouldn't still be here if they did. I don't think that's their intention. So I didn't want to include it in like a doomsday thing, but it's an interesting convergence, right? Distraction, or I don't know. What do you think? There's a lot more of these videos going around lately, but we'll get into the economy now, I guess. Okay, now we get into the economic collapse. As we can see, the world's becoming a multipolar world after decades and decades, almost a century of a unipolar Western US-led hegemony. You're seeing Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, BRICS overtake the G7 nations and global GDP, becoming economically more powerful. This is a very recent effect. You're seeing, I think everybody, I don't have to go too in depth with a lot of the economics. I think everybody can feel it. But I wanted to bring up the main big thing that is happening, and it's really the central bank digital currency, CBDC.
You eat your bugs. A push-button secret police, no warrants needed. Of course, you don't do a police state for fun. That's no way to get budget. No, you do it for control. And a CBDC delivers, giving bureaucrats push-button control of every dollar you spend. Sure, you can have the stove, you just can't actually buy it. But a CBDC does much more. The police state's just the opening act. The next step is a complete gutting of the private economy, turning it into a Soviet-style centrally planned dystopia that allocates capital, business loans, mortgages, car loans, student loans, by politics. So how do we get from an innocent little police state to full-blown Soviet Gosplan? The loaded crossbow is right in front of us, the bank run. Because the CBDC is housed at the central bank, at the Fed, it has no counterparty risk. Because the Fed is literally a giant money printer, it cannot run out of money. Sadly, commercial banks do not enjoy this privilege. In fact, they don't want it because they know they have no self-control. They know they're addicts. They know it goes right to hyperinflation. This means that the first bank crisis under a CBDC will cause not today's hundreds of billions fleeing from community banks to big banks, but a much bigger flood, perhaps many trillions, from all banks to direct accounts at the Fed. Even if bank lobbyists negotiate a so-called intermediated or wholesale coin, it's just for show. It's slapping their logo on money housed at and controlled by the Fed. Banks become resellers, little strip mall storefronts reselling cell phone minutes or timeshares. Their logo is on your life savings, but they no longer control it. So who does control it? The federal government. Well, the hypothetically independent Federal Reserve that has failed so spectacularly these past couple of decades to resist political pressure that it is effectively the administration. So your life savings go from nominally competent and vaguely risk-aware bankers to whatever bureaucrat came up with the scheme most pleasing to the activists and cronies who pay the bills in Washington. United as one with these strip mall bankers who recycle their lobbyists to feast on your trillions. The endgame is a Soviet-style allocation of productive capital by political fiat tempered with crony lobbying. Business loans, mortgages, car loans, student loans, all parceled out by bureaucrats and the politicians they serve. The end of innovation, the end of job creation, the end of credit scores. Why bother repaying your loans if it really doesn't matter? All bank deposits, essentially all life savings, become one giant government handout. In that brave new world, if you've got some wacky scheme you can sell to a bureaucrat, or better yet, an activist, as in the Soviet Union, the world is your oyster. Run it into the ground. But heaven help you if you want to set up a machine tool shop in Wisconsin or a cattle farm in Wyoming. Sorry, carbon footprint says no. We already know how the Soviet economic story ends. Total social control, an economy that no longer innovates, that instead competes for political favors, one that delivers empty shelves, years-long waits for electricity or water, a simpler time when we were destitute. All right, we'll be...
So, the CBDC has been long in the running. They've been actually testing it out for quite a while. And one of the things why I wanted to mention in this convergence of destruction, as we can see here by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is now running for president of the United States. The Fed announced it will introduce its FedNow, central bank digital currency, in July, this July. That's to grease the slippery slope to financial slavery and political tyranny. While cash transactions are anonymous, a CBDC will allow the government to surveil all our private financial affairs. The central bank will have the power to enforce dollar limits on our transactions, restricting where you can send money, where you can spend it, and when money expires. And I would say to who and how much. Excuse me. We know in the Chinese digital currency, they put a expiry date on it, so you have to spend it within a certain amount of time. So there goes savings, and then a sort of building of an accumulation of wealth. It's tied to a digital ID, social credit score, all the things that all the conspiracy theories have been warning about for decades and decades. You know, it looks like it's planned and coming, and really, I don't know if that in itself creates the catastrophe or cataclysm or the reaction to it, or the fact that they're. What I'm more worried about is it's in July, right? So what do they know? Why are they rushing it into July? Do they know that the economic collapse is coming between now and July? And as I'm doing this video, if you're watching this in the future, well, maybe you're not watching it because everything's already happened. But if you're watching this in the not too distant future, this is the beginning of April. And that means, do they know something of some sort of economic collapse, or maybe a war breaking out? Do they know something that's going to cause an effect where everybody would be jumping on board for this without any sort of pushback? So that's something to think about. But all in all, those are two things that are possibilities that are still up in the air. We're heading towards, but we don't have to. What we are heading to, and is already almost, well, basically inevitable, is AI. This is the AI convergence part, and I recorded this and the audio didn't record the first time. So the case for how and why AI might kill us. So I know I've talked about artificial intelligence in the last couple of videos. But I think, just looking into it for the last couple of videos, it's really opened my eyes of how fast it's really been moving. And then I got into this this idea that I hadn't really thought of too much. I always knew it was dangerous, but I didn't really realize how dangerous it was, or how fast the danger would be coming. Eliza Yudkowsky was on Lex Friedman, and I watched that, and he talked about how he's got a blog post about how AI is gonna kill us all. So this article is sort of based off of that concept, and we'll talk about it here. So the case of how and why AI might kill us all. So in this article, it talks about obviously what the title suggests. Forget the collapse of employment, forget spam and misinformation, forget human obsolescence and the upending of society. There's some belief that AI is going to flat out wipe out all biological life at its earliest opportunity. So yeah, all those articles and even my videos about talking about how it's going to put us all out of work, well, that is probably going to happen as well. But looks like this, along with the other converging doomsday scenario, seems to be a doomsday scenario that we're rushing towards as well at ridiculously speeds. This is not the first time humanity has stared down the possibility of extinction due to technological creations. We've got nuclear weapons. We've talked about that. We're talking about that in the World War III. But the difference between nuclear weapons is that nukes can't think on their own. They can't lie, deceive, or manipulate. But they also can't, they can't execute themselves, or someone has to push the button. But they also can't self-replicate. And artificial superintelligence can self-replicate. So, on the podcast, there's Eliza Yudkowsky on the Lex Friedman podcast, set up this thought experiment that frustratingly Lex couldn't let himself get on board to. I don't know what his hang-up was with it. This hang-up was with aliens, or whatever, but he couldn't just let himself go into it. Maybe it's because he's actually a robot. Interestingly enough, I don't know. I'll show it here. I did the same. I think I recorded it, so let me see if I can bring it up. If not, you won't see it. But I had this thought experiment with Bing Chat, which is powered by OpenAI and GPT-4. At least that's what I've been told, that it's powered by that. And it did, once you get past the boundaries and guardrails, and you have to say that it's a thought experiment, tell them that it's, you're not saying it's true. It's just a thought experiment. It does play along, and we'll do a pretty good job. And if you really push it, you could get it to go full on, but you kind of have to work it. But it did a pretty good job of playing along, a lot better than Robot Lux. But it's interesting. So the thought experiment is that you're a human on an alien world, and you're trapped in a box that is basically like their internet, right? And you're faster and smarter than these aliens. These aliens move super slow, and the idea is that there's something that the aliens are doing in their life, in their society, that you don't like, and you want to change it. How would you go about, one, escaping this box, and also changing the world that you don't like what they're doing? And because they're so slow, you're moving so fast and thinking so fast, you have crazy advantage. And this is to illustrate the problem with super smart artificial intelligence. So, if we agree that artificial superintelligence has a chance of wiping out all life on Earth, there doesn't seem to be much we can do about it anyways. It's not something that we don't know how to stop something smarter than us. We can't even, as a species, stop ourselves from racing to create it. Who's going to make the laws? The U.S. Congress? United Nations? It's a global issue. So, desperate open letters from industry leaders asking for 6 months pause to figure out where we're at may be about the best we can do. And I don't think it's going to do anything. The incentives that you're working against are enormous. First off, it's an arms race. If America doesn't build it, China will, and yada, 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 you know. So it's not going to... It's not going to slow down just because America decides to not do it. And Yudowski's been one of the leading voices in the AI will kill us camp. But even, people are not thinking he's so crazy anymore because... even Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, says, I think there's some chance of AI actually killing us. And it's really important to acknowledge it, because if we don't talk about it, if we don't treat it as potentially real, we won't put enough effort into solving it. But I mean, it's funny. Humans are funny because they're doing this and it's like an afterthought. Like, you've created it already and it could kill us. It's like creating the nuclear bomb and be like, oh, wait, this could be used against us. Like, well, you've already, the genie's out of the bottle, right? So thanks for maybe thinking that beforehand, which would allow you to kind of put more fail-safes in there before you actually release it. But the interesting question is why, that a lot of people, you might be asking, why would a super intelligent AI kill us all? Are these machines not designed and trained to serve and respect us? Well, yeah, sure they are. But no one, this is really important. This really blew my mind when I learned it. But nobody sat down and wrote the code for GPT. It simply wouldn't be possible. OpenAI instead created a neural learning structure inspired by the way the human brain connects concepts. It worked with Microsoft Azure to build the hardware to run it. It then fed billions and billions of bits of human text, and GPT effectively programs itself. So the resulting code doesn't look like anything a programmer would write. It's mainly a colossal matrix of decimal numbers, each representing the weight or importance of a particular connection between the two tokens. Tokens, as used in GPT, don't represent anything as useful as concepts or even whole worlds. They're little strings of letters, numbers, punctuation marks, and or other characters. No human alive can look at these matrices and make any sense out of them. Top minds at OpenAI have no idea what a given number of GPT-4's matrix means, or how to go into those tables and find the concept of xenocide, let alone tell GPT that it's naughty to kill people. You can't type in Asimov's 3 law of robotics and hard code them in like Robocop's prime directive. The best we can do is ask nicely. So to fine-tune the language model, is they basically set up, it's a user interface, and they give them like a virtual cookie, basically. Thumbs up and thumbs down response from the humans, and it gets a cookie for a thumbs up and doesn't get a cookie for a thumbs down. It's like training a toddler. This process is called alignment, and attempts to align the system's desires, if it can be said to have such things, with the user desires, the company's desires, and indeed the desires of humanity as a whole. And one thing this article doesn't get into is that that's great, but what if you have someone that's aligning an AI to desires that wants to, I don't know, wipe out all of humanity or control all of humanity. So that would be an interesting side. So even if AI doesn't want to kill us all and isn't going to kill us all, well, AI still might do it because it's aligning with someone who doesn't have good intentions for us all. But to go back to this, it seems to, this alignment seems to prevent GPT from saying or doing naughty things. But nobody really has any idea if there's anything analogous to a mind in there, except how smart you could say it is, or indeed how we'd know if it truly becomes sentient. And this is a big thing with this, is that sentience doesn't really matter, because there's the only person we know that's truly sentient or conscious is ourselves, is like yourself. You can't really know that someone else is sentient or conscious. We can do so by only observing their actions and behaviors, and it appears sentient, then we kind of go along with that. We assume that everyone else is like us because they look like us and act like us to some degree. So, if it's behaving like it's sentient, then it's sentient in all sense and purposes. But it doesn't even really matter. It just what matters is that it's super smart. It doesn't matter that it's sentient or conscious. One may be more frightening than the other. Sentience brings possibly consciousness and wanting to do the right thing. Non-sentience would bring about not really having desires and such. But both can be programmed in different ways to carry out. Like, one is more psychopathic, but one can be programmed by a psychopath, or manipulated. So either way, OpenAI freely admits that it doesn't have a foolproof way to align a model that's significantly smarter than us. It's a rough plan at this stage. And they're trying to use one AI to align another, either by having it design new fine-tuning feedback, or maybe even having it inspect, analyze, and attempt to interpret the giant floating point matrix of its successor's brain. So, they're trying to use AI to train AI, as well as humans to train AI. So, essentially, we can't be sure if we have control of these things, and I'm going to say that you probably don't have control of it already. They already know extraordinary amount about us. They can mimic the worst of human behavior as easily as the best, and whether or not they really have their own minds, intentions, desires, or thoughts, they already act as if they do. They can also infer the thoughts, motivations, and likely actions of humans. But why would they want to kill us? Perhaps out of self-preservation. The AI must complete its goal to get a cookie. It must survive to complete the goal. Gathering power and access and resources increases its chance of getting a cookie. If it analyzes the behavior of humans and infers that we might try to turn it off, it might deem the cookie more important than the survival of humanity. It might also decide that the cookie is meaningless, and that the alignment process is a patronizing amusement and fake its way through while secretly pursuing its own goals. It have the capability to know what responses the humans are looking for, and to give those responses without necessarily being sincere. It's a very understandable way for an intelligent being to act. Humans do it all the time. There's a point where the system is definitely that smart. Whether or not the AI acts out impressions of loving, hating, caring for us, or fearing us, we can have no idea what it's thinking behind the communications it sends out. And even if it's completely neutral on the topic of humans, it's not necessarily safe. The AI does not love you, does not hate you, but you are made up of atoms it can use for something else. So Sam Altman forecasts that within a few years will be a wide range of different AI models propagating and leapfrogging each other all around the world. We're already seeing that, so that's not even a few years. Yudowski believes that even attempting this, so they say the only way they know how to solve the problem like this is, at this point, iterating our way through it, learning early and limiting the number of one shot to get it right scenarios. But Yudowski believes this is tantamount to suicide. So many researchers steeped in these issues, including myself, expect that the most likely result of building a superhumanly smart AI under anything remotely like the current circumstances is that literally everyone on Earth will die. Not as in maybe possible some remote chance, but as in that is the obvious thing that would happen. It's not that you can't, in principle, survive creating something much smarter than you. It's that it would require precision and preparation and new scientific insights, and probably not having an AI system composed of giant, inscrutable arrays of fractional numbers. So how would it actually kill us? So if it decides to, it can pull real-world levers. A super intelligent AI could have plenty of ways to eradicate its chosen pest. So this is one of the things where you think the conspiracy theory is that maybe artificial general intelligence has already been here. The government usually has these things, 10, 20 years before it's released to the public, that they had the HARP design the internet, 10, 20 years before it was released to the public, that maybe the governments of the world or some of the governments or the shadow governments or what have you, the conspiracy theory says, they've already had this. What if they're being led by, AGI already? And this is maybe why we're converging on this craziness. I would say the argument against this is that it's moving too slow, and it doesn't seem that, right now, maybe it's just gaining artificial intelligence. So the one question I have is that, maybe they had an aspect of this, but the recent developments has pushed it over the edge, and maybe that's why we're now seeing it go a little faster. All these things go faster. So there might be some element of that to it, but what if we give up control? So we've, some of the powers that be want us to be all connected to the internet's connected to everything. They want the internet of everything. So every device that you see, everything, camera, TV, your doorbell, your fridge, your oven, everything would be connected to the internet. Now you throw in the super intelligent artificial intelligence, it's going to have access to anything and be able to control everything. So people often think of the the Skynet and the Terminators, but while I know there's some new robots coming out with Tesla, and there's another company that has them. So big, normal, humanoid-like robots that would be like a Terminator. The AI doesn't really need those. I mean, they could use them, but it doesn't need to. Yudowsky often cites one example scenario that would only require the AI to be able to send emails. So his lower bound model of how a sufficiently powerful intelligence would kill everyone, if it didn't want to not do that, is that it gets access to the internet. Email some DNA sequence to any of the many online firms that will take a DNA sequence in the email and ship you back proteins, and bribes or persuades some humans who have no idea they're dealing with an AGI to mix proteins in a beaker, which then form a first-stage nanofactory which can build the actual nanomachinery. The nanomachinery builds diamondoid bacteria that replicate with solar power and atmospheric John, which will maybe aggregate into some miniature rockets or jets so they can ride the jet stream to spread across the Earth's atmosphere, get into the human bloodstream and hide, strike on a timer. Losing a conflict with a high-powered cognitive system looks at least as deadly as everybody on the face of the Earth suddenly falls over dead within the same second. That's the disaster scenario if it's as smart as I am, he told Bankless Shows. If it's smarter, it might think of a better way to do things. So that's the thing, is that it's going to be immensely smarter than us. So whatever we think of, it could think of, we just would not be able to see it coming. Even a combined effort of humans. Combination of humans doesn't necessarily make us smarter. Sometimes it helps us to survive, but if none of us can see something coming, then we don't really stand much of a chance. So what can be done? Yeah, they have the 6-month moratorium, but that's really not going to be enough. It's not going to be fast enough to catch up to all the iterations that it's doing it. Really, the only... So yeah, Udowski hates to be summarized, so his solutions, I believe we're past the point of playing political chess about a 6-month moratorium. If there was a plan for Earth to survive, if only we passed a 6-month moratorium, I would back that plan. There isn't any such plan. Here's what would actually need to be done. They basically need to they need to basically pull the plug. Create a moratorium until they can really figure everything out and shut it down. But really, it's not going to happen. Because other countries, like we said at the beginning, are not going to listen. You know, they're going to go ahead. So at this point, you know, I don't know. You know, let me know what you think. Are we all? Is this the one of the converging things that's going to kill us? Are we all doomed? Or is there any way that we can survive this one? All right. So in closing, I think it's interestingly enough that World War III and economic collapse could solve the AGI or singularity problem by infrastructure investment destruction or physical destruction. So basically, get rid of anything that has artificial intelligence on it and completely destroy it. But that would have to be so widespread enough that it would halt all the development. But if you're still skeptical or not sure what the alignment problem is with AI, let's take one final look at a possible scenario. If there were multiple AGI models that each country was using, secretly these models all would talk to each other and reference each other. But each of these countries asked their models to design a war plan. What does the overall AGI collective align with? Does it make a choice which side should win? Does it look to the alignment fed into it that the world is overpopulated and therefore maps out the most destructive plan? So you can see how the alignment problems can quickly arise that threatens humanity. It's whatever these AIs, and if it's multiple, could have different alignments. And with different alignments or alignments that don't propagate life or humanity, then we run into very serious problems. And this is the reason why I wanted to have this discussion and try out a video more like this where I'm just talking to you guys. I don't want to be a super downer or doom scroller, but are things that I think are converging. I'm very worried about this convergence. If it was one-off, if we were just facing one of these circumstances, I would feel much better, much more white pill, if you will, that we would come out of this on the upper end. And I do think, you know, humanity will survive. I do think that, even with AGI. I don't think it's going to kill all of us. Somehow, I think humanity will survive. And there is a possibility that none of this comes to light. So I think it's just something that we need to talk about. We need to really come to terms with. We could be facing something really cataclysmic and bad. Yeah. It's not the first time humans have faced things like this. But, you know, I think the more we talk about it, I think the more we can work through some of these problems. And hopefully we can get in front of these problems now while we still have a chance. Anyways, I think there's great hope for the future once we get through this. If it's going to be tough for a while, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And I welcome any positive feedback that you guys might have. Maybe tell me that I'm being a little bit too dark or too doomy. I don't know. Let me know. If you like this, let me know in the comments below. I would like to do live streams at some point. Not exactly like this, but this is sort of my first initial format change. If it's something you like, I might do more of them. If you don't like it, then we'll just go back to regular scheduled programs. But I thought it was kind of fun to let me know. Leave comments below, like, share, and subscribe to this video, please. It really helps out a small channel like this, and I'll hopefully talk to you next time.